No one can ever be certain that their baby will be born without some deformity or congenital ailment. Life just doesn't come with those kind of guarantees. Everything cannot be tested for and everything cannot be diagnosed. However, look at the billions of people walking around in this world. Most of them were born whole and healthy, correct? The most likely outcome is that a baby will be born healthy, or at the most have one of the common minor defects that can be easily corrected, such as cleft palate. If you know for a fact that you carry genes for certain congenital defects, you can talk to a genetic counselor and decide whether you want to take the risk. You can choose to take the risk, not have children at all, or adopt children. Even if you adopt children, you cannot be sure that they'll never have medical problems or that an undiagnosed congenital problem will not show up. If a deformity is discovered during pregnancy, some parents elect to terminate the pregnancy, while others feel as long as the child has a chance of some kind of life, that the chance at life should be given. The fate of a Chinese boy who was born with a rare birth facial defect has caught the attention of millions. The child, born in southern China's Hunan province, suffered from a severe transverse facial cleft, which means there are two huge gaps appearing from both sides of his mouth leading towards his ears. The heart-wrenching story of China's mask boy, who appears to have two faces due to a rare birth defect, Hai Kang from China's Hunan province suffers from transverse facial cleft. Rare condition means the boy, born in 2009, appears to have two faces. His mother said she was devastated when she saw Hai Kang for the first time. The child has been dubbed Mask Boy. The doctors had never seen anything like it before. When Kang was born, he looked so different that at first the rest of the family didn't want the baby's mother to see him. But she begged and pleaded, and finally they put him in her arms. But when she saw her son's face, she was utterly shocked. The child was born in southern China's Hunan province, suffered from a severe transverse facial cleft, which means there are two huge gaps appearing from both sides of his mouth, leading towards his ears. Due to the deformation, Hai Kang seems to have two faces, which has caused the media to call him Mask Boy, a nickname he's had for the past 7 years. Hai Kang was born on March 4th in 2009 to a humble family of farmers from Zhongsha town in Jiantang City, according to a previous report from Changsha Evening News. Instead of the joyful feeling a new mother would have while meeting their baby for the first time, Hai Kang's mother, Yilan Ji, said she was devastated. She said at first the doctors would avoid showing her the baby after Hai Kang was delivered, and after she repeatedly requested to see the child, the doctors brought her the baby and my whole body felt numb. She said to a reporter from Changsha Evening News, "I saw the child was crying and I cried too. I felt my heart was broken. Why would this happen to me?" Yilan Ji, who was 23 years old at the time of his birth, was not only shattered by her son's birth defect, but was also puzzled. The woman said that she had undergone 3 ultrasound scans and 1 Doppler ultrasound scan during her pregnancy. No deformation had been detected. Hai Kang's grandmother even said that a lot of the family's acquaintances suggested they should throw away the child, but she said, "How could we do that?" Living in a traditional and impoverished village in rural China, Hai Kang's family were teased and looked down upon by their neighbors for the boy's unusual appearance. Hai Kang's story was heavily reported in 2010 when his mother took her to the No. 163 military hospital in Changsha for treatment. The press and public expressed an outpouring of sympathy towards Hai Kang and his family, who struggled with expensive medical bills. Wang Daoken, a doctor from the hospital, told a reporter at the time that Hai Kang's condition was extremely rare and very serious. Dr. Wang said, "Not only his soft tissues were damaged, broken, and moved, his temporal bone, cheekbone, sphenoid bone, and upper jaw were all damaged." With the donations from the public, the child's family were able to afford surgical operations for Hai Kang in 2010, which reportedly cost some 400,000 yuan, which is about 47,000 British pounds. On May 19th and September 1st, Hai Kang underwent 2 operations at the No. 163 military hospital. Dr. Du Quang, who led the treatment, said in a TV interview with Hunan Public Channel that both operations were successful. However, he added that Hai Kang would need to wait for about 10 years to see if his facial bones would grow in a normal way. TV footage at the time showed that Hai Kang had already looked better at the first operation. In the past 7 years, Hai Kang's story and pictures have been widely shared by different Chinese media. Most people were shocked by Hai Kang's condition and were looking for ways to help the family. Last month, reports on Hai Kang's stories appeared again on Chinese-language news websites such as ET Today, after Haikang's pictures had been shared on social media and online forums. Sadly, there have been no further reports on how little Haikang is recovering. Reporter Louis Jun, who wrote the story for Changsha Evening News some 7 years ago, told Mail Online that she had not contacted Haikang and his family since he visited the boy in hospital in 2010. As a result, he does not know whether or not the boy is still suffering from the facial deformation. Haikang's mother, Yilan Ji, who was 23 at the time of her son's birth, was devastated and confused. Lane Ji previously told Changsha Evening News that doctors at an unnamed hospital avoided showing her the baby after she gave birth. After repeatedly requesting to see her son, the doctors brought her the baby and she recalled, "My whole body felt numb." Lane Ji said she had undergone 3 ultrasound scans and 1 Doppler ultrasound scan during her pregnancy, in which no deformation had been detected. Transverse facial cleft is a rare congenital anomaly that seldom occurs alone and is frequently associated with deformities in the structure developing from the first and second branchial arches, according to an article in the Indian Journal of Plastic Surgery. The incidence of this condition varies from 1 in 60,000 to 1 in 300,000 live births. With the help of public donations, the family was able to afford money for several operations to repair Haikang's face. On May 19th and September 1st in 2010, the boy underwent 2 operations. According to Duquesne, both were successful, but Haikang would have to wait about 10 years to see if his facial bones would grow normally. 7 years after his 2 initial surgeries, it's not yet known whether the boy is making progress. However, Haikang's story continues to resurface on the internet, as ET Today shared some photos of the story in December of last year. There have been various surgical techniques reported from the repair of the transverse facial cleft using a straight line closure, Z or W-plasty, and local flaps, among other things. However, several problems remain, such as deviation, distortion, and scars in the commissure, joint between the bones and cheek. A 2010 study in the Journal of Plastic, Reconstructive, and Aesthetic Surgery found using an oblique vermilion mucosa incision and straight line closure, the cross-overlap joining of the muscular bundles at an angle of 90 degrees, and the horizontal straight-line skin closure with a small Z-plasty lateral to the nasolabial fold can construct a symmetrical and natural commissure without obvious scarring. Other baby with to brain. For 5-month-old Yamanur, life hadn't even begun yet when, right after his birth, a small swelling at the back of his head indicated a tumor the size of his brain. The neurosurgical team at Saptagiri Hospital concluded that Yamanur was suffering occipital encephalopathy, a rare condition among infants wherein sac-like protrusions of the brain, along with fluids, bulge out, forming a swelling owing to a skull defect. A life-altering surgery that lasted at least 6 hours on March 28th by the team of doctors saw Yamanur getting rid of the tumor that could have taken his life away long back. Residents of Kushtagi, Taluk, Bellary, Karyappa, and his wife were distraught while they took their 3-day-old baby back to their home, unaware of what needs to be done next. "We had no money, and doctors told us it was a brain defect my child was suffering. Since I couldn't afford any money for such a treatment, I just left it to God and took him back home, where my 2 other children were awaiting their baby brother," Karyappa said. 5 months later, a camp set up by Saptagiri Hospital in Bellary, where the Yamanur was noticed by a health worker and was referred to the neurological team at the hospital where surgery would ideally cost 2.5 lakh rupees, was conducted free of charge under Vajpayee Arogashi scheme.